with Scott Allen.
Hello, I am your host, Scott Allen, and this is Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. If the topic is leadership, I'm in. I've spent more than 20 years in the field teaching, learning, writing, and questioning. When I'm not working on Phronesis, I travel, delivering keynotes, working with individuals and teams, and helping people from organizations across industries become better leaders. Want to learn more? Visit me at scottjallen.net. Phronesis offers a smart, fast-paced discussion about all things leadership. We explore relevant topics and incorporate practical tips to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. Listen Notes lists Phronesis in the top 3% of podcasts worldwide. Phronesis is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. ILA brings together those who teach, study, and develop leadership, advancing leadership knowledge and practice for a better world. Learn more at ila-net.org. Finally, if you enjoy Phronesis, please subscribe to stay current on our weekly episodes. If you find an episode that resonates, please share it with your colleagues and friends. And if you want more content, subscribe to my newsletter, The Leader's Edge. The link is in the show notes. As always, thanks for listening. And now, here's today's show. Okay, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for checking in wherever you are in the world. Very special guest today. I'm very excited for this conversation. I have Dave Ulrich, and he is the Rensselaer Professor at the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, and a partner at the RBL Group, a consulting firm focused on helping organizations and leaders deliver value. He has published over 200 articles and book chapters and over 30 books. He edited Human Resource Management from 1990 to 1999, served on editorial board of 4 other journals, and on the board of directors for Herman Miller for 16 years. He's spoken to large audiences in 90 countries, performed workshops for over half of the Fortune 200, coached successful business leaders, and is a distinguished fellow in the National Academy of Human Resources. He is known for continually learning, turning complex ideas into simple solutions, and creating real value to those he works with as he defines human capability as the next agenda for people and organization. He posts weekly and comments daily on LinkedIn. Some have called him the father of modern HR. Dave, it is so wonderful to have you here. I know that you are in Utah right now, and, I think it was October 2020. Actually, the conversation happened in August 2020, and I said to my wife, during the pandemic, I said, I need to get west. And she was like, yes, we need to get west. So we jumped in the car. We drove from Cleveland, Ohio to North Platte, Nebraska in a day, wiped everything down in a hotel room, hunkered down, got back up, and drove to St. George, Utah. And it was the most magical month, other than that little thing called the pandemic. But we sheltered in place there and ventured to Bryce Canyon, Zion. I mean, you are in just an incredible part of the country. And it was hilarious, Dave, because our kids, we were there, headed home around Halloween. Our kids kind of were commiserating. They were thinking, oh, this is not going to be a great Halloween. And we said, it's going to be the best Halloween you've ever had. And Dave, we ended up running around Arches National Park, the 5 of us, as dinosaurs, those blow-up dinosaur costumes of T-Rexes, under balance rock, and we ran around, and it was a magical time in our family, and that all took place in Utah. And so when I think of Utah, you are in a beautiful spot in the world. But I always ask this question of guests: what else is not on your bio that people should know about you before we jump in, sir?
Well, first of all, welcome to Utah. We're glad to have taken some of your money, and southern Utah, St. George and Moab and Arches and Bryce. It's like being on another planet. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
The Red Mountains. What's not on my bio? I like to learn. I think that's implicit in the bio. I am passionate about ideas. I've called my ideas my best friends. My wife said, I thought I was. And I said, well, sometimes you're a good idea. But I love ideas. I love ideas with impact and enjoy exploring ideas with fresh people. That's my passion.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, speaking of ideas, I mean, you are just prolific on LinkedIn. And so I'd like to start there for just a moment because A, I want listeners to know about your work on LinkedIn, but talk a little bit about your strategy of how you use LinkedIn in some pretty interesting and creative ways.
For 20 years, I flew 200 to 300 flights a year. And sometimes I'd make a mark sitting on the airplane on the window, and I'd sit in a seat and there'd be 3 marks. I'd sat in that seat 3 times. Well, guess what? The pandemic happened. And the best learning when you do a workshop is not the workshop, that's a talk. It's the before, the after, the engagement. And you've done many of these, Scott, in all your executive programs. It's, what do you feel at lunch? What are the questions you get? Well, guess what? You don't get those when you don't travel.
Yes.
And a lot of the webcasts are just one way. I mean, it's like a TED Talk online. So I thought, I'm going to try this thing called LinkedIn. I've never tried it before. I have found it delightful. I post every Tuesday. I'm really excited about the post coming up, which is not easy. I've got to create a 1,200 word post every week, which is not always easy.
Yes.
And then I've decided the cool thing about LinkedIn is not just to post. And there are a lot of folks who post, but I love the engagement. I don't care about the likes as much, but I get a lot of comments. And so I post an idea and people say, that's really stupid. And what I discovered is there's 10 to 15% of the comments that are just stupid. And you ignore those. Those are trolls. And the cool thing about LinkedIn comments, they're from everywhere.
Yes.
I get a comment from Sri Lanka. I get a comment from India. I get a comment from Nepal. And I don't care where the ideas come from. I almost never look up who's making the comment.
Yes.
I read the idea and go, wow, that's really cool. I hadn't thought about that. And so now I've got some LinkedIn idea friends. I'll never meet them. I don't know what they look like. They're tall, short, whatever, but they're my idea friends. And I have found it delightful. So I post every Tuesday and spend an hour or two a day usually making comments on people who make comments. Now, if you make a stupid comment, I'll ignore you. But if you make a comment, I'll probably respond. And I've had some great discussions about really fun topics. The one this week is on AI for HR.
Nice.
And we're going to give a checklist. What are the 10 things you should pay attention to? I've also found that it's really fun to put your insights into 1,200 words. Because sometimes people write books and you read and you go, you could have written that in less. My rule of thumb is 1,200 words. And that's a pretty good discipline. I mean, to say, if you can't say it in 1,200 words, then you're not going to be able to say it. So my LinkedIn thing is fun. I've got quite a few followers and it's not commercial. I'm not making any money on it, but that's not my agenda. My agenda is to shape ideas that will have impact.
Well, exactly. But again, that curiosity and the learning, that person from Nepal or that person from Sri Lanka, you get some feedback and you get their perspective and their worldview. And I mean, how cool is that? I mean, it's awesome.
It is so cool because I'll talk about a management practice and somebody from Sri Lanka will say, that doesn't work in our culture. So tell me what does. And so suddenly all this academic abstraction becomes very pragmatic. So what would work in India or in Brazil or in China or in Nepal? And I just find that that's a delightful way to share ideas. I also find that the world is pretty small. That the set of ideas, I know you've done a lot of podcasts on leadership and leadership development. The principles are pretty global. You say, well, we're really different. Well, guess what? Underlying principles are pretty similar and the practices may vary, but I've enjoyed LinkedIn. I keep thinking, how do I now get out of it? It's a flywheel that I don't know how to stop. But so far, I've enjoyed it and enjoy posting every Tuesday. I hope people will look at them.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, and okay, so let's go there with you used a phrase a couple moments ago, maybe not a phrase, a couple words, academic abstraction. And one thing I have loved about this project of the podcast is in a similar vein. I've built relationships with individuals. It's led to writing projects. It's led to some work. It's led to relationships where I've never met the individual, but we're thinking partners online. It's just been so much fun. And it's almost in a way systematized my learning as well. We've never met before, but it's like we're having a cup of coffee right now and we're building a relationship. And this puzzle of how do we do the work of a couple moments ago, you'd shared your mission. How I verbalize mine is, how do we better prepare people to serve in these really challenging roles? How do we better prepare them? And this whole notion of leader development and that work and truly making it practical, not an abstraction, not a theoretical exercise, but truly better prepare people to serve. You're in executive education. You see what's swirling around these individuals. It's incredibly complex, the work they're doing. So You've been at this for a long time. You've been engaged with people at all levels of organizational life. How do you think about the space of leader development? And I shared this with you before we started. We're going to put "know" in quotations, but what do we know when it comes to developing leaders and better preparing individuals to be successful when serving?
Well, the first, and there's a lot of things we know, and I think the academic plays a very good role in terms of rigor and theory. And I'll tell a quick story that shaped my life.
Please.
I was doing consulting, and I was working for a company, and it was a Friday morning in Chicago, and we were doing some session. I don't even remember the topic, organization leadership. At 9 o'clock, we took a break, and the phone rang. And Irwin Jacobs, so it's decades ago, Irwin Jacobs had just gone from 4.5% to 15%. He was doing green mail. So he was a takeover artist, and he went their stock 4.5 to 15. And he said, I'm paying at 50 for the stock. I'd like you to buy me out at 75. It was a green mail. Well, my topic got thrown off the table. And they said, we now have to defend ourselves. What do you have to say? And I said, not much. So I went home and I said, can I come visit with you again on Monday? I spent the weekend. Academic journal after academic journal. What do you do to fight that? What do you do to fight back? There wasn't anything.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything. So I went back Monday and said, let's co-create a solution. I just got excited about that. I mean, there wasn't an academic framework that had been studied over decades that goes through all the rigor of publication. I edited a journal, Human Resource Management, for 10 years. So I understand the rigor of publication.
Yep.
But I thought it was so cool that they let me back on Monday with a small team, and we co-created a strategy around business and agenda. And then I thought, that was kind of cool. And I bet you've done the same thing with your clients, with Lexus, Toyota, whoever it is you're working with. I got a problem today. When I teach in executive programs, the most exciting teaching, today we're talking about talent. We got 30 people in the class at Michigan. Write down the biggest talent challenge your company's facing today. And they write them down. I say, let's share them. That's our case study. We're not going to do a Harvard case. We're not going to do a case that I know what's on the board and I've got scripted answers and I've done case notes. Your 30 challenges fall into 6 buckets. Let's spend an hour on each bucket.
Oh, I love it.
And sometimes the buckets are, how do we get retention of our software engineers in China? And I go, I have no clue. What do you think? And at the end of an hour, we've created an idea.
Yes.
And to me, that's some of the most exciting learning because the challenges are real. It takes a good academic background because there is research on all of this stuff around fundamental principles. So in leadership, principle 1, leadership matters. Duh. We can all look at our lives. Well, I'd love to ask you, Scott, who was a leader who influenced you? I won't say any more. Who was a leader who influenced you?
The first name that came to mind when you said that was a gentleman named Bob Cottrell. He was my first supervisor out of undergrad, and he led a Thursday morning book club, 7 a.m., and we read the Leadership Challenge. And that was the first time I ever really understood that leadership was something that we could study, that we could learn more about. And he fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life. Seasoned executive, but open to these young Turks sharing their thoughts. We talked about challenging the process, and we talked about, well, we're not modeling the way, and, just engaged and put up with us and was curious himself about the puzzle. So that's the name that comes to mind for me, Bob Cottrell, just an incredible man.
Everyone who's listening to this call has someone.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have others who you've now influenced. They say, who comes to mind? Scott, Allen. Wow. Lights go off. Spark. Leadership matters. And sometimes it's formal. And Bob Cottrell could have been a supervisor, could have been a mentor, could have been somebody in a company. Sometimes it's informal. It's a mother, it's a father, it's a coach. And so the premise is we all get intuitively, leader makes a difference. Number 2, they exist in all settings.
Yes.
In families. I know somebody with 3 children, 14 and 16. Right now, they don't respect parents, but they will. That was Mark Twain's great quote. At age 16, my father was the dumbest person alive. At age 21, I couldn't believe how much he learned in 5 years. But we learn leadership in all settings. And in a company, leadership matters. And it's not just at the top of the company. It's my direct supervisor. It's my peer. It's the person who's mentoring me. And then we began to discover there are some fundamental principles of leadership that Practices vary, styles vary, personalities vary, but there are some fundamental principles. The Work Leadership Challenge. I'll go deeper on those principles. What are those principles of leadership that your organization needs to adapt? Or if I'm a leader, what are the principles I need to understand? But three things: leadership makes a difference. We get that. We've got empirical data. I love statistics. My Ph.D. is in statistics, mostly. We found that 70 to 80% of a company's market value is called intangible value today. It's something that creates value that you can't touch or feel, something that doesn't fall on your foot. So that's your financial predictability. Did you make your numbers? It's your strategy. It's your industry. 25 to 30% of that intangible value is around leadership, broadly defined.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's a lot. And so we begin to say leadership matters intuitively. You had Bob that helped you. I had a mentor named Bonner who helped me. There's the same thing. My mentor was so cool. He said, you're in this class. Go show me what you've learned. There's no paper required. He triggered my imagination. I wrote a 10 to 15 page paper every week. Now I cheated. I was majoring in English. So I turned in an English paper. Sources of Power in Paradise Lost,
Nice.
William Foote White, the ideal man. I turned it into my English professor and they go, that's weird. And I turned it to him and he'd go, keep doing it. So I cheated. I don't think that's cheating. I think that's multitasking today. But we got the informal leaders, and then they make a difference in companies. And we look at the iconic leaders who shape the world we live in, politically, economically. Leaders exist at all levels and in all places. And three, there are some basic principles of what it takes to be an effective leader.
Well, okay. So let's talk about developing leaders in organizational life. Who's doing it well, and what are some common themes that you see when it comes to preparing these individuals to serve in these roles? Because again, it's not easy work. More and more is being asked of these individuals. Complexity seems to be increasing. I always get a little bit, hesitant to come off as alarmist. Like, this is now the most complex time in history. However, it's pretty darn complex.
We have VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex.
Yes.
Times VUCA on steroids may be the right word.
We need super VUCA or something. We need a new term.
But there's two ways to approach it. One is from the company level. The other is from the individual level.
Okay.
Let me do individual first. One of the things we're finding, and again, you've been around this world like I have. I've been around a long time. It used to be kids, young men, young women, brilliant scholars. You're in an MBA program at Michigan or John Carroll or SMU or somewhere. I'm here because I want to be a leader. I don't hear that as much today. I think a lot of people are saying moving into management comes with a price.
Yes.
I want to have a job where I can make an impact. And in fact, I think in some ways, we in the world of leadership need to be more encouraging to the next generation that management, leadership, whatever you want to call it, it has an opportunity to make a big difference.
Yes.
The scale, the scope. And so I want to encourage those who might be listening as students or early in their career, don't walk away from management. There are some benefits. Now, not everybody wants to do it. Somebody said, Scott, we'd love you to be a great executive ed teacher that shapes a set of ideas around leadership and organization, or a dean. Which one would you probably jump at?
I'm going to go with the first.
Yeah, me too. I've been invited a few times to look at a dean job and I go, I don't want that burden of management. So there is something to be said about being a functional expert in shaping a field. I get that.
Yeah.
But there is also something to be said about the leader or manager who creates an enterprise that outlasts himself. The ultimate test of leadership is, did this survive beyond you?
Yeah.
So my first thought to the individuals listening, don't walk away from management. It's hard. It's tough. The pressure is high, but there are benefits. And it's not about economic. I mean, you can make a lot of money doing individual stuff today, but there are benefits. So in an organization, how do you begin to make sure that we build the leadership for the next generation?
Yes.
We've done research on that. We've got a lot of books on that. You start with my assumption, leadership makes a difference. That when you invest in leaders, they perpetuate the next generation. They build future benefits. And then you've got to have a sense of what does it mean to be an effective leader? That's the principles of leadership. We did a study, and I love research. I love big data. A lot of our data sets have thousands and thousands of data sets. Your listeners who are scholars will just scoff in just a minute. We decided to do a leadership study with 15 people. And everybody goes, that's not even a good focus group. But those 15 people had written 100 books on leadership. They'd done 3 million 360s. So this is not a random sample. This is like Leadership Challenge, Posner, Kouzes.
Yeah.
Bob Eichinger. I mean, these are the folks who really know. We asked them 2 questions. What percent of basic leadership fundamentals, principles, whatever you want to call it, is basically the same stuff? Big company, small company, private, China, Brazil, US. The answers were 50 to 80%.
Okay.
One guy said 85%, and I'll tell you what it is. I won't name who that is. It's one of the folks. Some were 50. So we're going, 60 to 70% of leadership is the same basic stuff. Now, again, that's a sample of 15, but it's a sample of a good 15. They've done this. They've got 3 million 360s. Question 2 is obvious. What is it? What is that basic stuff? And we discovered 5 things. These are the principles that are somewhat timeless. You may have different words. 1, strategy. You got to know where you're going. What's my future? Where am I going? What's the outside world? How do I set vision, goals, agenda? 2, execution. You got to get it done. Implementation, change, accountability, get it happen. So you got to know where you're going, strategy, execution. How do I get there? 3rd is talent. Who goes with me? How do I build people? How do I make sure that people are communicate, engage, connect? 4, human capital development. Who stays when I'm gone? How do I empower the next generation? How do I make sure that what I leave behind is better than what I found? How do I build a longer-term talent agenda? So north, south, east, west. North, where am I going? East, if I go east, it doesn't matter. Execution, how do I get there? South, who goes with me? Human capability, who stays when I go? And then in the middle, personal proficiency, authenticity, integrity, values, character. What we have found is that those 5 are pretty timeless. I can go into almost any company and say, show me your competence model. I was in a company, they have 9 competencies. I map them against those 5. One company has most of their competencies in personal proficiency. We want our leaders to be authentic, to have integrity, to have values, to have character. Great. Another company got them all in execution. Our leaders get results. They deliver. They have accountability. They manage change. We love to look at a company and say, do you have a balance of what goes into those 5 somewhat timeless principles? By the way, you look at them and you go, duh, where are you going? Strategy, execution. How do you get there? Talent, who goes with you? Human capability. How do you endure over time? And personal proficiency in the middle. And then what we've seen is they've evolved by company and by person. When I teach, I love to start by saying to a group of individuals, executives, and those who are teaching might do the exercise. You've all been around great leaders. Their name may be Bob, it may be Bonner, it may be whatever the name is, your mentor, my mentor. What are 5 or 6 things that make someone a great leader? And just by yourself, write them down. Make sure they get 5 or 6. Everybody gets them down. And then I say, read them off. And I love to do a check. I do that probably once or twice a week. Great leaders have a sense of the future, strategy. Great leaders manage their customers, strategy. They have a vision, strategy. They get things done, execution. You know what? Your predisposition to leadership is on strategy and execution. You didn't have anything on people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a 360. This is not a scientific test.
But it's a great litmus test where someone's mind is.
That's just it. This is a quick and dirty glance in the mirror. How does my hair look today? But it's a great kind of quick and dirty. And I've done that, and almost everybody picks 1 or 2 or 3 of those quadrants and go, oh, I believe leaders have to have integrity. They have to be authentic. They have to have character. They have to build trust. Middle.
Yes.
Boy, people love you, but you don't know where you're going.
Exactly.
You don't get there. Nobody goes with you. And I say it with humor.
Yes.
But we all have predispositions. And I hope those listening would almost do that little exercise. Now, I've skewed it because I've given you the 5 dimensions. Top of my head, what makes a great leader? And then see, where am I predisposed? And then where can I learn the other? I believe in leadership. Number 1, it matters. Number 2, it matters everywhere. Number 3, I've just gone through the principles. And we see the practices evolving. For example, we talked about one today. In strategy, where are you going? One of the key behaviors today is learning to deal with uncertainty. Who could have predicted the last year and a half? We've had some major global disruptions and wars. We've had political disruption. We've had economic disruption. We've had technology. Who could have predicted a year ago ChatGPT? I mean, just how do you live with uncertainty in a strategic way? So we're seeing new stuff show up in each of those quadrants, but those 5 north, south, east, west, and in the middle seem to be pretty timeless.
They endure. we could go to the conversation of culture eats strategy for lunch. So culture, shaping culture, designing culture.
Oh,
How do you
it's a
think about
great
that?
one. I love it. And for me, culture is that top left, north, south, east, west. It's the west. How do you build an organization that outlasts you? You build a culture that is not dependent on your style. A
Yes.
lot of cultures are dependent on the leader. If you're an SME today and you're the founder of a company listening, your personal style, your brand becomes the company brand. But you've got to shift it. I love culture. Thank you for raising it. It's one of my favorite topics. How do most people define culture?
One simple way I think about it is, how we do things around here.
Right? Unwritten rules. I was in a company once and they said, Dave, you're not following the unwritten rules. And I said, write them down. I don't know what they are. Culture is our values. It's our behaviors. It's how we do things. I'm going to push it. One of the things we've discovered is that in order to build sustainability, it's not what you do in the company. It's how what you do in the company is creating value for those outside the company. We like to define culture as the identity of the firm in the mind of your key customer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's not how we do things, it's how the customer wants us to do things. So again, that's abstract. Let me make it pragmatic so I'm not an academic abstraction. Almost every company's got a set of values. We value service, we value innovation, we value integrity. Take those values to your most critical customers, the ones you either have or want to have. Ask 3 questions. Question 1, are these the values you want us to have as a company? Service, innovation, collaboration. I love that filter. One company I was with, their number 1 value was, we want to be the most profitable firm in our industry. Go to your customer with that one.
Yeah.
They're going to go, no, I don't think so. But question 1, are these the values? And you get, there are values. Question 2 gets better. What do you, the customer, need to see so that we live those values better than our competitor? What does service mean to you? What does collaboration mean to you? So you, the customer, define the value, the behavior.
Yep.
I find that so helpful because value is defined by the receiver, the customer. When you travel, I just got to ask Scott, do you check bags or carry bags?
Well, first, I didn't say this earlier, but you're fortunate to be in 2A, so that's good. That's a good thing. But I only carry on. I do not check ever.
I haven't either. We're doing a 1-week cruise and we won't check bags. So we've just flown 12 hours to Singapore. It's midnight. They throw your bag in the car. You show up at the hotel and the guy comes out, opens the trunk, grabs your bag and walks off with it. Is that service to you? For me, it's not. I've carried the bag 6,000 miles. I don't have any Singapore dollars. I don't want to wait 30 minutes. I'm really tired. I need to get my sleep for my 7:00 call. In fact, I've almost gotten in fistfights in foreign countries. They grab my bag and I grab it back and he says, I give you good service. And I say, go away. I'll pay you an American $5 just to
go away.
Now, the theory is question 1, are these the values you want? Question 2, you define them.
Yeah.
The customer defines service. Question 1, are these the values you want? Yes. Question 2, you define them. Question 3, when we do what you just said, will you buy more from us? Culture eats strategy for lunch. By the way, Peter Drucker never said that. So if you have a great quote, tell the world Peter Drucker said it.
Okay.
Everybody will quote it. But look at that third question. I was doing a talk, and I do about half my talks with HR and half with business leaders, 600 business leaders, and he's going to talk about culture, bring your pet to work and hug and chant. No. Are these the values you want us to have? What are the behaviors? And question 3, if we do that, will you buy more? And they said, you mean culture should increase revenue from targeted customers? Yeah. If it doesn't, you don't have the right culture.
Yeah.
That's the kind of work we're trying to build into leadership.
I love that framing and that customer experience. Yes. I mean, again, some of the organizations that I'm working with, let's just pretend it's a bank for a moment. At times we'll hear in those sessions, customer, 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 and relationship, relationship, relationship. And for me, we will have a relationship if you have great technology, because I don't want to walk into your branch and I don't want to build a relationship with the person who's going to be there for the next 6 months and then it'll be someone else. I want great technology and then we have a relationship. But there's other contexts where I really do want a relationship with an individual, where that is great service. That's how I would define it.
And let the customer define it. Let me give an example that we live. We bought a Lexus, and I know you had experience with that industry, and it stalled at a stop sign. That's not good.
No.
And it did it again. We called the local dealer, and the dealer said, don't drive that car again. I'm going to drive a car out. You'll get a loaner. They called us the next day and they said, we live in Utah. We have found a dealer in New Jersey where they had the same problem. We're going to fly the mechanic in to work on your car tomorrow.
Wow.
Because they seem to know what's wrong with it. Keep your loaner, but just so you know, we are paying attention to you because it's not safe to drive a car that stalls. Wow. You talk about a loyal customer. Yes. I mean, we're going to fly somebody in from New Jersey to Utah because they've solved this problem. Rather than teach us, we're going to fly them in, and in a day or two, you'll get your car back.
Wow.
Wow. Now, again, for some, when's the last time you were in a bank?
Yes.
I don't want to go in a bank. So it's going to be technology based. But I just, that idea, how does the customer define value? So in our mind, your culture in some ways is your firm brand made real to every employee. How does an employee help a customer create the brand that they live? We call that leadership brand as well. One of the things we do with leadership, and I'm talking way too much too fast. I want to get everything in 30 minutes that I can. People say, do we have the right leadership when we come into a company? Here's where we start. Show us your advertising. Show us your social media. Show us your print. Show us your television. What are you telling customers in your advertising? Now show us your leadership training program.
Wow.
Is your program woven around the promises you've made your customers? I say that and people go, well, that's obvious. And I go, those chief learning officers, those in charge of leadership development, when's the last time you started with the outside promises to customers? Anyway, that's the stuff we try to do.
And, I love that framing though, Dave. I mean, I've never heard that. I've never heard that framing of this. And I think it's just fascinating. How did you come upon that? Or is it just years of dialogue?
I came upon it fighting with the bellman in Dubai, saying he's defined service through his lens. I define service as the customer. So what does that mean in a bank? What does that mean in a retail store? What does that mean in a technology company? And well, the premise my mentor taught me, values defined by the receiver, not the giver.
Yeah. Values
defined by the receiver. So I know you've been married, you've got kids. Who defines the gift that you give your spouse? You or her?
Her.
Have you ever missed?
Yes. Oh, of course.
I know this is voice. I'm raising both hands. I've missed many times. When I first got married, I got my wife tickets to sporting events. And her comment was, enjoy yourself. Now I got to say, what was the coolest gift I got my wife when we had 3 kids? And I know you've had 3 kids. We had 3 kids in a similar age range.
Awesome. Yep.
When they were young, she was doing her Ph.D. I was good. The best gift I could give her from Christmas Day to New Year's, I took the 3 kids and gave her a week alone.
Yes.
And then it hit me. What's the best gift I can give her? Not me.
Peace and quiet for a week.
Peace and quiet for a week. And she said, boy, that's the best gift. Let's do that every Christmas. And now we've changed. We actually spend time together now. But anyway, values defined by the receiver. What a wonderful principle. Anyway, that's leadership. The one test, and I got to get this out because I know our time's running. People say, how do you know somebody's a good leader? Here's my simple test. How often does someone leave an interaction with you feeling better or worse about themselves? Leadership is not about you. It's about, do they leave feeling better?
Yep.
And that's the same logic. So I've covered a lot of stuff, Scott. I just raced through stuff.
Well, I so appreciate your framing. I mean, you're just so skilled, Dave, at framing up these conversations in a really, really interesting and intriguing way that takes a lot of the complexity and boils it down. How does someone feel when they walk away?
Isn't that a great question?
We can go through all kinds of transformational leadership, situational leadership. We can go all kinds, but in the end, and so your synthesis, I think it's Steve Jobs had a quote, simple can be harder than complex. And
love
so
that quote.
You have to get your thinking clean. And maybe that's what I'll call the episode, clean thinking.
That's LinkedIn. Can you put in 1,200 words?
Yes.
A complicated idea. That test, it's an easy test. I mean, if you were my leader and I'd met all my goals and you said, Dave, you're going to get a 20% bonus. We love you. We're going to make you a full professor at a great university. I leave feeling good. But what happens when I didn't make my goals? What happens when I didn't perform well? Yep. Can you as my leader still make sure that I leave feeling good? I'll give one quick example.
Sure.
I'm coaching a very senior leader in a big company. Everybody would know it. I won't share it, obviously. Their company is global. They use email, very direct, very bold, very blunt as a company. And I said to the leader, before you send out one of those feedback emails, give me 2 hours to give you feedback. I'm coaching, you coach. Here was the email. You made a huge mistake. It's going to cost us millions of dollars. If you can't fix it, you'll be fired.
Wow.
Blunt, direct, candid. I said, may I add 3 lines? And I did this really quick before he hit send. Line number 1, I care about you. Line number 2, you have great potential at this company. And then you made a big mistake. It is going to cost us millions of dollars. Leaders can't walk away from the mistake. And then instead of, I'm going to fire you, what can we learn so that this won't happen again?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I've never sent that kind of email. And I said, trust me on this one.
Yeah.
He said it. He sent a note back the next day. He said, wow, I got a different response. Again, the point is, feel better. Even I care about you. You've got great potential and you made a mistake.
Yep.
Let's learn.
Yep.
I think if those listening can get that message into leadership, it becomes an affirming with discipline. You did make a mistake. Don't hide. This is not Pollyanna.
Yeah.
That's one little tip I've seen been helpful.
Well, Dave, as we wind down our time together, I always ask, what's caught your attention recently? It could have something to do with what we've just discussed. It may have nothing to do with what we've just discussed. But is there something you've been streaming or listening to, reading? What's caught your attention?
I'm going to do 2 things. One is you cannot do a conference, and this podcast is incomplete until I say the word AI.
Okay.
I mean, AI is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's caught my attention that I've gone to people, and especially in the organization people area. I'm not in marketing. I'm not in supply chain. I'm not in technology. I think we're 20 to 30% up the S curve. We're using AI to drive efficiency, to drive productivity. I think there's so many more things that artificial intelligence, machine learning, Gen AI can teach us. And I'm trying to discover that. And my second goes with it. When I do sessions, I love to end with a question. What's the best year of your life? 14 years ago when my twins were born, 16 years ago, when I got married, when I graduated, when I did my 245th podcast, when I changed careers. One of my friends said, when I got divorced. And I think they're all good, but wrong. My message that I love to leave people with is the next 12 months should always be the best years of your life. And if the next 12 months are always the best years of life, no matter what age we are in life, physically, we're always probing that message that you asked me to start with. What's next?
Yeah.
And if the next 12 months, your next 2 podcasts are going to be the best you've ever had. And that mindset, I think, keeps us all into a mode of inquisitiveness and learning and growth mindset, another hot topic. So that would be my message. May the next 12 months be the best months of your life, best year of your life.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Dave, I am so thankful for your time today. I'm thankful for your incredible work. Obviously, it's prolific. Obviously, one reason it's prolific is that you're synthesizing in a really, really beautiful way. And I'm so appreciative for that. I'm thankful for the conversation that we've had. I hope we can do it again. And I hope you have a wonderful summer, sir.
You too. Thank you so much. If there's one message you want people to take from what I shared, what would the meta message be? You've listened well.
The meta message for me, again, I go back to those 2 words, academic abstraction. And I think there's value in that. But are we synthesizing into digestible, usable ways of framing the conversation for folks doing the work? That's how I think about it. That's what I'm...
One of my favorite papers this year was, how do you make knowledge productive?
Yes.
How do you make knowledge productive?
Yes.
Scott, I'm leaving feeling better about myself.
Well, I hope it is the best 12 months of your life, sir. Be well.
Thank you.
Wait, what? Jonathan, Reams, what are you doing here? I'm about to do my reflection on this show. What's going on?
Well, we're doing more reflections. I've just popped into your life suddenly. Hey, you remember we did all these sessions about a year and a half ago on adult development and leadership?
Some of the most popular episodes we had, Jonathan.
We're going to do a pre-conference workshop at ILA on this. And what we're going to do is go beyond the kind of simple stage models and get into some real granularity of distinctions and tools to apply that.
No one better than you to do that. And you know what? I'm going to put a link in the show notes. So listeners, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the intersection of adult development and leadership, and you want to learn at the ILA conference in November, this is an opportunity for you. Now, Jonathan, I got to go. I got to reflect on this episode.
Come on, Scott, reflect away.
I have a favorite quote, and it's Steve Jobs. I kind of referenced it in the episode. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. And when I think about this conversation with Dave, something that I just love, and I referenced it in the episode, is his ability to take very complex topics and simplify them to a level where it's easily understood. His 5 dimensions of a great leader, I think it's just brilliant. I think it's wonderful. It's a great heuristic from which we can begin a deeper conversation about leadership, but it's a wonderful framing of the concept. So Dave, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you bringing your wisdom to the table, and I look forward to many future conversations. Couple learning opportunities for all of you. We've got the International Leadership Association Conference November 7th through 10. And we've got the International Studying Leadership Conference in Birmingham, UK, December 8th through 10. Put those on your radar. Wonderful opportunities to explore this concept of leadership. As always, thank you so much for checking in. Take care. Be well. You have just finished another episode of Practical Wisdom for Leaders with Scott Allen. To contact me, visit scottjallen.net or send me a note at scott@scottjallen.net. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. If you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And now here's my daughter, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.